Today's daf, we're going to be learning a Sanhedrin daf lamed chet. It's a very long daf, so brace yourselves. We're going to go a little quicker than usual. Okay, with that, we'll get started. So we have this, we started yesterday, and we're going to see there's a little issue about the facts of this next section. But we started with Cain and Hevel in the Mishna. If you remember, we were talking about the threats that are given to the witnesses who come for dinei nefashot, for capital cases. From there, they mention Cain and Hevel in terms of the value of life and why you should not lie if somebody, you shouldn't lie and try to get someone killed. From there, we have these three statements about Cain, the drashot of Cain, that were all said by, I want to point this out right now, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, because we're going to go back to him. It's going to seem like a bit of a non-connected issue, but it has something to do with Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. From there, we got to exile atones for sins. We learned that from Cain. And then we said not only does it atone for half the sins, it also atones, and then it says for three things, and then it also atones for everything. And that we start from Yechonia, that basically said he's not going to have any children, and then he ends up having children. And we see this Shaltiel, and from Shaltiel we see he had children, Sheshtalo El Shalo K'derech Nishtalim, because it was the whole thing was his name. It said in the pasuk he was Asir Shaltiel. Why was he Asir? Because he was born in the Beit Asurim. It was after he was conceived when Yehoiachin was in jail, meaning after he was taken after this promise of God, because once he was exiled, his sins were atoned for. The other thing we said was that he wasn't going to have anyone ruling anymore from his family. And then we get to right now, Davar Acher, a different drasha, starting at the top of lamed chet, Shenish'al alalato el, he was Shaltiel because God basically undid his own promise. Zerubbabel, Shenizra beBavel. Okay, now we quote Zerubbabel. The commentaries think here that we're saying that Shaltiel was the son, that Zerubbabel was the son of Shaltiel. And then we're going to see here, and again, this shows that his Zerah, it was from Bavel. That's why it's called Zerubbabel. He was Nizra beBavel. He was, conceived in Babylonia. Umashmo, and what's his name? Nehemiah ben Chachel Yishmo. In other words, they're saying Zerubbabel came from Shaltiel, who was already conceived in Babylonia, and who is Zerubbabel? Nehemiah ben Chachel. That's Nehemiah from Ezra Nehemiah. And from there, you see that this promise of God was broken. And why is that? Because the exile atoned for all sins. There's a whole bunch of problems. Okay, in Pasuk in Chagai, it says Zerubbabel is the son of Shaltiel, and that's what this seems to be predicated on. But in Divrei Hayamim, he's listed as the son of Pedaiah, who was a different son of Yechonia. Also, there's a pasuk in Ezra in Parak Bet, pasuk Bet. You can look at all these pasukim where it seems to list Zerubbabel and Shaltiel as two different people. So some people claim that is a different. There's a different Zerubbabel, and this is talking about a different. It's very confusing, and the facts don't all line up. So just so you should know that. Okay, moving on, because we don't have time to get into too many things in depth today. Yehuda v'Chizkiah b'nei Rabbi Chia havu yatbei b'sudat hakamei Rebbe. So now we go to the two sons of Rabbi Chia who were sitting in a meal before Rebbe. Now you have to remember the generations. Rebbe and Rabbi Chia were contemporaries. So here we have the generation below. Amar lahu, egru chamra dar deke. Oh, so velo havaka amre velo midi, and they sat there not saying anything. And I guess Rebbe wanted conversation. He wanted to hear what they had to say. Amar lahu, he says to his people, agru chamra dar deke ki echad milta. Go give them some wine so they'll start to say something. Kevandi ibasu, once they got drunk, patru v'amru, they started to say the following thing. This is what you say. It's a little dangerous sometimes when you get drunk. Ein ben David ba'ad sheichlu shnei batei avot miYisrael. The Mashiach from David is not going to come until there's two houses in two basically leaders of the Jewish people are destroyed. Elohein, who is that? And none other than Malchei Beit David. Okay, people from the house of David. Elohein Rosh HaGolah beBavel, which usually came from a family. I think the Rosh HaGolah were also from Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda, and Nasi Shebe'eretz Israel, and the Nasi in Israel. Now, who was the Nasi in Israel at the time? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So they were basically saying, in order for the Mashiach to come, you're going to have to be destroyed first. Shene'amal v'haya lemikdash. Okay, this is a pasuk about the Mashiach. Okay, I don't have time today. We're going to quote a lot of pasukim. I won't have time to tell you where they're from and all that, so you can look them up. But this pasuk, the context of it, is about when the Mashiach comes, yeh lemikdash, like it'll be a sanctuary, ula even negef uletzur michshol l'shnei batei Israel, but it will also it will wipe out two houses in Israel. And basically what he's saying is those are the houses of the Beit David. So in order for the Mashiach to come from Beit David, first there has to be some destruction of the houses of Beit David. Amar lahem banai, kutzim atem metilim beinai. What are you putting thorns in my eyes? Like, oh, you're sitting at my table and you're telling me I'm going to be destroyed before the Mashiach can come? Amalei Rabbi Chia, so Rabbi Chia comes in to support his sons. Says, Rabbi, al yera be'einecha, yayin nitam b'shivim otiyot. Yayin was given with 70 letters. That means the gematria of yayin is 70, right? 10, 10, 50. Visod, okay, the word sod, also secret, nitam b'shivim otiyot. Also, the gematria of sod is 70. Nichnas yayin yatzas sod. Okay, and they're just saying what, they kind of got a prophecy, and that's what they're saying, and you can't get upset with them. Amar Rav Chisda Amar Mar Ukva. Okay, now what this has to do with anything, first of all, it sounds very similar to we were talking about the Malchei Beit David and their continuity and all that. So it does relate a little bit to that, and it relates to the three quotes about, if you remember, were made by this Rav Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, which is the person we're talking about here. Now we're back to Yechonia and Yehoiachin and the Galut, and we're going to talk about something else. Amar Rav Chisda Amar Mar Ukva v'Amar Amar Rav Chisda darash Mary Bar Mar. Okay, so Rav Chisda quoted someone. Ma dechtiv vayishkod Hashem al ha'ra'ah v'yivi'eh aleinu ki tzadik Hashem Elokeinu. Yechonia is the early Galut. Okay, so forget about the Israelite kingdom, that was before, but after the Israelite kingdom, before the Judean kingdom gets sent to Babylonia in the destruction of the first temple. Earlier than that, Yehoiachin goes to Galut first. He's taken with the Charash and the Masger, which we're going to learn are the big Talmidei Chachamim. And then when Tzidkiyahu was king later on, then they get taken completely to Galut, and that's this pasuk. It says, Vayishkod, Hashem quickly brought the Ra'ah, and meaning it sounds like he made it come earlier. When he did this because he's a tzaddik, meaning it was a righteous act that God brought the destruction earlier. That seems very strange. Why would God make it earlier as a good thing? That doesn't sound like a good thing. So we're going to have two different explanations for this. Yes, it was God wanted still to be people from Yechoniah's generation who were still there, because it's much easier to go into exile when you get there, you have all these prominent people that are there that can help you out. And particularly in world eyes of the Torah, it's somebody Chachamim who can teach you Torah and keep you with your religion while you're in Galut. So the whole idea was to do it earlier, because if they didn't do it then, that generation would have been wiped out, and there would have been no one in Galut. Now we have to see how we know that he brought Talmidei Chachamim with them. It doesn't say in the text that there were Torah scholars going. So the Charesh and the Masger were 1,000. Charash, those are people that once they open their mouths, everybody else becomes a mute. Okay, it usually means deaf, but it means here deaf. Usually in the Gemara, deaf is deaf mute. Everyone's silent because they say such amazing things that everybody just closes their mouth. This, by the way, relates to what we talked about before about in Dinei Nefashot, don't have the biggest one start, because then no one's be able to say anything. And it also relates to the story of Rebbe. They were sitting there, and the generation below wasn't saying anything because Rebbe was such a great gadol, and only until he gave them wine did they start speaking. Mazgil, kevan shesuglim b'halacha shuvein potchim. Once they say something lahalacha, no one opens it up anymore. Okay, it's like a done deal. So those obviously are Talmidei Chachamim from this drasha. V'kama hayu, and how many were they? Elef, and they were 1,000. That's why the word 1,000 is there. That was the first answer. Ulamar shikdim shtei shanim levinoshantem. Okay, we're back to gematria. Vinoshantem. Basically, the pasuk is saying that this is psukim and dvarim, and it basically says, when the people are going to go bad, you're going to stay in the land, vinoshantem, for a long time, and then God is going to kick you out. And the idea of vinoshantem is, how much is vinoshantem in gematria? 852, and they were supposed to be there 852 years. And it says there that when you then sin and all that, you'll be in the land for a long time, and then God will of aved tovidu maher, you'll be completely wiped out. So the idea is here, God made it 2 years earlier so they wouldn't get to the stage of 852 years when they'd be completely wiped out. So he let them go to exile to actually save them, and that was the tzedakah. And Amar Rav Acha, if you want to look at, okay, so how do we get to 850 years? Rashi does the whole tally. I'll tell it very briefly, but Shlomo, it's basically from the first temple to the destruction. That's how many years the temple was around. It says that when Shlomo built it was from when they got into the land of Israel till they were exiled. It was 850 years. And how do we get that? Because Shlomo built the first temple. It says it was 400 and 480 years after they got out of Egypt, which really means 440 years after they got into Israel because of the 40 years of the desert. Then the first temple was around for 410 years. So from there you get to 850, 440, 410, you get to 850, and God took them out 2 years early, and that was the tzedakah. Amrav Acha Bar Yaakov Shmamina Mehera Demari Alma Taimne Mea V'Chamishim B'Tartin Havu. Because it says Oved Tovidu Maher, and what was Maher? You will be quickly wiped out was 852 years. That's when they would have been completely wiped out. So Meherav, God, is 852 years. Okay, you think something for it to happen fast. If you want something to happen fast, you're going to, the fast of God is 852 years. Okay, what the importance of that, I'm not sure what you want to do with that. Okay, Leficha, moving on. We finished up Yechonya, which we got to because of Cain and from the whole Mishna. Now we're back to the Mishna. The Mishna says this is why humans were created, Adam Nivra Yechidi, okay, to show you the value of life. That's why first man was created, Adam Rishon. From there came everybody else. And then we saw in the Mishna already, they got off on a tangent on a whole bunch of other different reasons why Adam Rishon was created, just one person, and God didn't decide, let's just create a whole bunch of people. So now the Gemara is going to say, we're going to bring a braita that also talks about this, but brings a whole bunch of reasons. Some of them we saw in the Mishna, and some more reasons that we didn't see in the Mishna. Tanu Rabbanan, Adam Yechidi Nivra Mipnei Ma. Why were humans created, right? Why was man created, one man first, and then from there came woman, from there came children, etc. Why was it done like that? We're going to come back to this idea a lot later today, so that the heretics, and again, we're talking about early Christian heretics likely, the heretics don't say there's more than one God. Okay, now, דבר אחר, מפני הצדיקים ומפני הרשעים, שלא יהיו הצדיקים אומרים, anu b'nei tzadik, ורשעים אומרים, anu b'nei rasha. This is very interesting. This is basically saying we don't want people to think everything was predetermined. We don't want the tzadikim to think, oh, I was born to the righteous one, so I don't even have to work to be righteous. I'm obviously going to be righteous. And the wicked people will say, I was born to someone wicked, so I have there's no point for me to repent because it's predetermined. This is my track, and there's nothing to do about it. But no, if there were two different rishuyot, then one would claim, oh, this was the tzaddik, this was the rasha. You're always going to end up comparing. And then if there were two people created at the same time, that would create all this issue. דבר אחר, מפני המשפחות, שלא יהיו משפחות מתגרות זו בזו. Okay, in order to prevent families from fighting with each other, because if we all came from the same family, we're all related, then we're not going to fight. Okay, so of course you might say, what do you mean? We fight all the time. So, they point that out. Well, now that Adam Rishon was created in just one, and yet families are, right, people still fight. Could you imagine how much more fighting there would be if we weren't all related? A different one. Okay, so now again, let's go back. If we all came from different people, I'd say, oh, this is clearly mine. And you would say, this is clearly mine. And we fight over things, or we'd steal things of other people because we claim, we'd say, oh, this was mine and not your family's and all that. So they say again, say the same thing. Right? People steal anyway and people fight anyway. Well, it would be much, much worse if there were been two people created at the beginning. No, sorry, I read that already. Okay, now we're moving on. Lahagid gdulato. Then we said we wanted to show the greatness of God, and if you don't remember what we said in the Mishna, we're going to quote it right now in the braita, so I'm not going to waste my time saying it again. Tanu Rabbanan. Another braita says, again, it's going to be similar, and then it's going to go off. Lahagid gdulato shel melech malchei hamlechim hakadosh baruch hu. Sh'adam tovea, right? The whole thing. Why was Adam nivra yechidi? Because they want to show the greatness of God. Adam tovea kama matbeot b'chotem echad v'kulam domim ze lazeh. Right? You make coins, and you coin. Right? They're all exactly the same, from the same mold. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tovea kol adam b'chotamo shel adam harishon. Right? We're all created in the image of the first man who was created. Ve'en echad mehem domeh lechavero, but none of us look like the other. Shene'emar titapek kechomer chotam. Okay, what they're proving from this pasuk is that we were created with a chotam, with a mold. Okay, because it says you will be flipped like the chomer of a chotam. This sounds like you're going to go back to. There's a whole bunch of different ways of understanding this verse. I'll go with one, which is you're going to go back to like just being with that, the way before we were formed, like just the material. But then you'll be like clothing. The truth is, maybe I'll go with a different interpretation, which is that if humans theoretically are all like the same, but then they dress each other in different ways. The dress, the outside makes us look different. But the idea being that there's some sort of chotam here, there's some sort of mold that was used, and yet we all come out different. Now, why don't our faces look the same? We don't want people to look at a nice house or a nice woman and say she's mine. The real issue here is the woman, because what's the issue? Well, it's a good question why this is, but what it seems to be saying is if they all, or at least one interpretation is, if they all look the same, then a man could claim this woman is his wife when she's really not, and who could prove not because she looks exactly the same as some other woman. So that's why everyone looks different. Will prevent the Rishaim, the light. Now this is, the light will prevent the Rishaim, meaning the light, meaning the faces. Everyone's faces, which kind of light up. Okay, there's brightness in the faces. Uzra Ramati Shaver, and the high arms will be broken. In other words, the people who try to take things of other people because of the Oram, the faces. Tanya Rabbi Meir Omer, there's three ways that everybody's different from each other: b'kol, in voice; b'mar'eh, in look; and b'dat, and the way we think, our thoughts. B'kol b'mar'eh, why is that? Mishum erva. We want to prevent erva and identifying people. You can identify people by voice, like let's say it's nighttime, you don't know who it is who's in bed with you, so you can hear their voice. And mishum erva, and look, because during the day you can identify people who they are by their look. This is an interesting one. If we all thought the same, then you'd be able to steal things from other people because you know where they hide their valuables. So you'd be able to figure out and then know how to get into their house. Okay, next. Tanu Rabbanan. Adam nivra be'erev Shabbat. Now we're already talking about the creation of Adam Rishon, of man, and we're going to call it man because woman was created after. So we're going to go by man here, right? There's no gender neutrality here. It was clear the first one was man. So Adam nivra be'erev Shabbat. So man was created on Friday. Mipnei ma. Okay, nice to be learning this on a Friday. Why was man created on Friday? We're back to this idea. We don't want anyone to claim that God and man created the world. That there were two gods, so to speak, who created the world, and one was what we call man, and that was a god, and Adam Rishon was a type of God, and he created the rest of the world with God. That's one reason. If he became arrogant, this you could use to anyone who you find arrogant, it's a great line. The mosquito was created before you on Maaseh Bereshit, so you're really a nothing. Another reason, he wanted to immediately go into a mitzvah, keeping Shabbat. God wanted to bring man into this world and then immediately give him a nice meal. And here we're going to have a parable for this. Mashal HaMelech Basar V'Dam, for the king. Shebana Paltirin, he built a big palace, V'Shechlalan, fixed it up. Hitkin Suda, made a meal. Achar Kach Echnis Orchim, then he brought guests in. Shenemar Chochmot Banta Beitar, we're now going to darshan Psukim in Mishle. Wisdom built her house. Chatzva Mudeh Shiva, she put up 7 pillars. Tavcha Tivcha, she slaughtered her animals. Mascha Yena, mixed her wine. Afar Chashulchana, even set up her table. Shalchana Rotet Tikra Agapim Romeh Karet, and then she sent her Na'arot, the women who worked for her, to call out at the top of the heights of the city. Chochmot Banta Beita, so now we're going to darshan this pasuk. Chochmot Banta Beita, Zomidato Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu, Shebarat Kol Olam Kolo B'Chochmah. This is a reference to God who built the world with his wisdom. Chatzva Mudeh Shiva, what are the 7 pillars? Elu Shiva Yemei Bereshit. Okay, 7 days of creation. Tavcha, Tivcha, Mascha, Yena, Afar, Chashulchana. What were all the things that God prepared, for it to be ready for people to come? Elu Yamim V'Na'arot V'Chol Tzorchei Olam. Those are the streams and all the waters and everything that basically was needed in the world. Shalchan Arotet Tikra. So who does she send, right? Who did God send out? Ze Adam B'Chava, Al Gapim Romei Karet, at the heights of the city. Rabba Barbachana Rame. So about this, basically then God called to Adam B'Chava, and that kind of finishes this idea, and then called them in for their Seudah of Shabbat. So now Rabbi Barbachana says, it says, Ramiktiv al Gapeh, Uchtiv al Kiseh. There's another pasuk later on in that same chapter that says the same phrase, al Gapeh Romeh Karet. Instead of saying al Gapeh at the heights there, it says al Kiseh, as if there was a chair there. So now they say, it seems to be a contradiction. Was it al Gapeh, where there was no chair, or was there al Kiseh? They say first it was just at the heights, then there was a chair because there was a chair I think the idea being here, there was a chair for Adam and Chava to sit. Okay, because Chava wasn't there at the beginning, and then she comes at the end. Mi peti asur hena chasar lev amra lo. Okay, another pasuk from Mishle, the same chapter. I'm not going to read the pshat of this pasuk, but I'm going to go with the drasha here. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu mi pitau. Peti is usually a foolish person. Here they're using it as mi pita, who's seduced. Okay, the word peti, lefatot means to seduce. Mi pitahu lezeh. Okay, who said yasur hena, go turn away? Who said that to Adam Rishon? Right, obviously Chava said it. She pulled him away to eat from the tree. Chasar lev amra lo. So now they say, who said it to him? Chasar lev. Chasar lev is Chava. How do we know the Chava is Chasar lev? So mi pitahu lezeh isha. Amralo dichtiv noef isha chasar lev. It says someone who commits adultery with a woman is called a chasar lev. Now here it's a little bit strange. It's calling the man who commits adultery the chasar lev. But what it shows here, chasar lev goes next to the pasuk with a woman because he's noef a woman. So there's this connection of chasar lev with woman, and here we have the woman seduced Adam Rishon to eat from the tree. Okay, Tanya. Okay, again, there's a lot of things going on in this section. It was actually hard for me to even write the summary for today because it's so many disjointed things. But at the end, we'll try to go through and just sort of show the flow of how this went. Okay, so again, when Adam was created, this is all about the creation of man. That's why, because we got there. The Mishna was talking about man being created, one person, and now we're just off on the creation of man. So the earth from the whole world was used in the creation of man. Shenemal, and this is in parentheses, but we really need to read it to understand. It says that golmi, like the form of the raw materials for man, or the unshaped flesh, God's eyes saw it, and God's eyes are all over the world. So if God's eyes are all over the world and they saw the unshaped flesh of man, must be that it was taken from the whole world. Amar Rav Shaya, Mishmei de Rav, turning now to Amabet, Adam Arishon gufo mi Bavel, v'rosho me'eretz Yisrael, ve'evarav mishar aratzot. So his body was from Babylonia. Now, before I even read this, I just want to explain to you what they're trying to do here, so it would be clear. I mean, I think this is what's going on here, which is all the time in the Gemara, they're trying to show what lands are the most important, and it's always where there are Talmidei Chachamim. And Israel has two kind of things right going for it. Yes, they have Talmidei Chachamim, even though the center was moving more to Babylonia, but Israel still has this special significance despite that, and you really see this from this text, because what's it saying? The body of man was created from Babylonia, the earth was taken from Babylonia, the head from Israel, because the head is the important part of where the brain is and the thinking, and that's the special part, unique, I would say also more unique part of people. And the rest of the body was taken from all over the world, as we said before. And Agvotav, his buttocks, Amarav Acha, Arabi Acha Me'akra Da'agma. Okay, was from someplace deep in Babylonia. And there's some people, commentaries, who say this was like a very lowly place. The people from there were bad, or something about it was bad. And it was trying to say, again, which parts, the buttocks are obviously the kind of less, right? People don't even like to talk about them. So that must have come from a place of low lives or something, bad about the land or something like that. So again, it's this idea of hierarchy of lands and where are the important places in the world. And that's, Adam Rishon is created in that way, again, yes, from the whole world, but also let's prioritize, let's give a hierarchy to these places. Amar Rabbi Yochanan bar Chanina. Okay, you think you have a busy day? Well, let's talk about the first day of the man was created. Super busy day. A lot of things happen, and kind of surprising that all these things happened in one day. But this is what Rabbi Yochanan bar Chanina darshans. Okay, so first all the earth was collected to create man. Shnia nasa golem, there was a figure created. Shlishit, in the third hour, nimtuchu evarav. Okay, so there were 12 hours in this day. We're going to see what happened hour by hour in the whole day. Third one, the limbs of Adam was created. Revi'it is rakabo neshama. The soul goes in on the fourth hour. Chamishit amad argalav. On the fifth hour, man stood up on his own feet. Shishit karashemot. 6th hour already started calling people names. Shvi'it is davgalo chava. Already by the 7th hour, he had chava, who was created. Shminit alula mitash shnayim v'yardu arba'ah. This is, I think, the most shocking that happened all in one day. They go into bed right, as two, and they come out as four. He already had Cain and Hevel on that first day. The command in the ninth hour was don't eat from the tree. Asirit Sarach, by the 10th hour, he had already sinned. Achatisrei Nidon, in the 11th hour, he was judged. Shtemasrei Nitrav V'halachlo, by the 12th hour, he was already kicked out of the heaven, of Gan Eden. Shneamal, Adam B'yikal Bal Yalin. Okay, where is this all coming from? That the pasuk says a person will never go to sleep in his glory, meaning there was no night where man went to sleep in his glory. By the end of the first day, man didn't even go to sleep without having sinned and being kicked out of Gan Eden. Okay, a very strong, powerful image of, if you go back to, God sees that it was just bad, the creation, by the end of the first day already, everything had gone ori. Amoraim Barchama, Ein Chaya Ra'ah. Okay, the end of that pasuk is Nimshal Kebehemot Nidmu. Okay, they're like animals. So now they say, Ein Chaya Ra'ah Sholetet Ba'adam, Ela In Ken Nidmalo Kebehema. When does a Chaya Ra'ah attack you? When you look like an animal. What is this basically saying? When you act like an animal and you look like an animal, the animals will identify you as animals, and then they'll pounce on you. But protect yourself by acting like a human, and then that won't happen. And that we learn from Shneimar Nimshal Kebehemot Nidmu. Okay, and then we're going to have a simam for the next stuff. Sha'ah b'sof arami. We'll get to all this. I see you're asking questions. This is obviously midrash. It's not clear that this is exactly what happened, and it doesn't right. It might contradict other midrashim about how the events occurred, so that shouldn't bother you. I mean, we've been learning Gemara for long enough to know that there's different opinions about everything, particularly about this. It's not like anyone was there and everyone can testify exactly what happened. Okay, and again, it's trying to get across an idea. That's what you always have to remember. What's the idea? The idea is that there's problems in humans, and the fact that man never went to sleep, bechavod, and already on day one already sinned. That's I think the big message here. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, b'sha'ah shebikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu livrot et ha'adam barak kat echad shel malachei hasharet. So when God wanted to create man, what did he do? First, he created a group of angels. Amar lahem b'tzomchem na'aseh adam b'tzalmeinu. Now this is trying to explain why it says na'aseh adam b'tzalmeinu. Who's the plural here? And again, we're going to get back later to the whole thing of dualism. It sounds like there's more than one God. Oh, the gods were sitting there saying, let's create someone in our image, right? So what was it? It was the angels. It wasn't another God. It was the angels who work under God. That's already a different story, right? They're not equal to God. They're under God. So the angels that God created said, well, what's man going to do? Amar lahem kach v'kach masav. This is what humans are going to do. We're going to keep quoting psukim, okay, and put them in the mouths of the angels. Why should we even mention humans? Why should we even have them? This is not a good thing. So God put his small finger between them and burnt them. Okay, off with you, angels. You don't really understand what I want to do. Okay, same thing with the second group. The third group comes and says they saw what had happened with the first two. They said, even though they weren't there, but word gets around somehow. They knew. I see that the ones who started, arguing with you didn't get anywhere. Clearly, the whole world is yours. You're the boss. Okay. Say whatever you want to do in your world. This is what you should do. Go for it. We'll be behind you. But then later on in time, when they saw the people really sin badly in the time of the flood and the time of the Tower of Babel, weren't those earlier angels, didn't they know what they were talking about? Amar lahem, okay, and this is maybe encouraging words for us going through, still in a war and struggling with lots of complicated challenges. Va'ad zikna nihu va'ad sevani espo. Okay, I will be with the Jewish people, right? I will be with humans even. This is a universal theme. I will be with the humans forever. I will struggle with them. I will suffer with them. Okay, I will suffer along with them. So meaning, even if they do bad things, even if, right, I will be there to suffer with them till the end. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Next thing that Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Adam Arishon misof haolam va'ad sofo haya. Okay, man, the first Adam Arishon was greater than, okay, like huge, greater than life, as we would say, he was from one end of the world to the other end of the world. He was so massive in greatness, I guess is what they want to say. I mean, it's tough to know exactly what they want to say. Shene'emal, as it says, Lemin hayom asher bara Elohim adam al haaretz ulemktsei hashamayim va'ad ktsei hashamayim. Okay, from the day that God created man in the land, and now in the land, ulemktsei hashamayim va'ad ktsei hashamayim, and from one end of the heavens to the other end of the heavens, which basically meant that Adam Rishon kind of filled up the whole world. Kevan shesarach, but once he sinned, because we see that man isn't filling up the whole world, God put his hand on him and shrunk him, basically. I shrunk the kids, and the greatness shrunk him down. Shene'emal achor v'kedem tzartani, I created you, front and back, basically meaning kind of everywhere. Vatashat alai kapecha, and then I put my hand on you. Okay, another pasuk. So what does it mean? God put his hand on and shrunk man down. Amar Rabbi Elazar, another statement like this. Adam Rishon min haaretz v'ad larakia haya. Now, instead of from one end of the world to the other end of the world, a man was from his height, from the land all the way up to the heavens. Shene'emal, same pasuk. Lemin hayom asher bara Elohim Adam al haaretz ulemiktsei hashamayim. What did I skip? Tell me what I skipped. Okay, if I skip something, I'll go back. But you're right, Nigita, what I skipped. But in any case, I'll just keep going on till you're right. When I read the story in the Torah, no, what am I? I'm sorry. I'll have to write again. Okay, I'll just keep going, and you'll write when you'll tell me. So Rabbi Elazar said basically that man was created now. His height went up because look at the pasuk. It says we were focusing on the words l'miktsei hashamayim u'lemiktsei hashamayim, right? Ag ktsei hashamayim, but it also says ala haaretz u'lemiktsei hashamayim. Okay, so chorva kedem tzartani vatashat alai kapecha. I don't think I skipped anything. I don't see that I skipped. You'll let me know. Okay, so now they say lemin hayom asher bara Adam al haaretz u'lemiktsei hashamayim. Okay, kevan shesarach hinei Kadosh Baruch Hu yadav alav u'miyato shene'amar achor v'kedem tzartan. So now we say, I haven't gotten to that yet, Gita. Okay, sorry for the break. Okay, haven't skipped. We're going to keep going. So now we have one pasuk which says, it's the same pasuk, but one drasha is from the earth to the heavens, and one drasha is from one side of the heavens to the other. So now they say, well, kashu kraya hadade. The pasuk contradicts each other. Meaning, what does it mean it contradicts each other? It means that we have one pasuk which actually says two contradictory things, and those two drashot contradict. Either his height was from the earth to the heavens, or it was just man was so large that he filled up the whole world. So okay, it was the same size. Okay, basically they're describing it in two different ways, but they really mean the same thing. The Amarav Yehud Amarav. Third thing he said, and you have to wonder why he's trying to say this. He spoke Aramaic. Okay, I think this is a way of maybe having the people who speak Aramaic identify with Adam Rishon. Shene'amar v'li ma yikru re'echa el. Okay, this is a verse in Tehillim, a Tehillim that's all talking about Adam Rishon, and they're putting these words in his mouth, and we're going to see exactly where he used these words in the next section. But what they're trying to prove is the word re'echa means machshavot. You know the word ra'ayon in Hebrew with an ayin, it means thoughts, okay, ideas really, but comes from thoughts. And that word, according to, again, it's unclear exactly in this pasuk which word is Aramaic, because they're all really Hebrew words, but they show a pasuk from Daniel. The commentaries say, some people think it's yakru, and that's the word in Aramaic, even though that's also a Hebrew word, but they show that it comes up in Daniel, the word re'echa, and as rayonot, or the word rayonot, I forget exactly what form of it appears there, but that it's a word that's actually, its root is in Aramaic. So now we're going to see. Where did he use that phrase? This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. Okay, so there's a drasha, this pasuk that says that God basically showed man what was going to be in all the future generations, who was going to be living, who the chachamim were. When he saw Rabbi Akiva, samach b'torato, so pleased by his Torah, but nitatzeh b'mitato, but he was so saddened by his death. And he said, Amar v'li ma yikru re'echa el. God, what happened to your machshavot? Like, how did they, right? How weighty are your, yakru also means weighty. How weighty are your thoughts? And basically, how could this happen? Okay, back to another statement of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Adam Rishon min haya. This is the strangest comment. He was a heretic. Now, Rabbeinu Hananel says this doesn't mean he was a heretic. This means that people claim he was a heretic. In other words, the heretics try to say that Adam Rishon was a heretic because they want to show, oh, look, heresy, and our ideas are rooted in Adam Rishon. So how do we see that he was a mean? Shneimar, Vayikah Hashem Elohim El Ha'adam Vayomer Lo Ayeka, right? And he says the famous, where are you? So what does it mean, where are you? An Natali Bcha, where did you go? Like, how did you turn away from me so quickly? So that shows he was a heretic. Rabbi Yitzchak Omal, and we're going to have various statements again, which could be just what the heretics are saying. There's different ways to understand this. But Moshech Ba'or Lato Haya, okay, he was trying to hide his circumcision. Okay, it wasn't a mitzvah of circumcision. Obviously, we're just talking about a concept here. Ktiv Hacha. Vehema, how do we get to the fact that, and how do we get from Adam Rishon to circumcision? Well, it says in another pasuk, Vehema ka'adam avru brit. They, and we're going to understand this literally, like Adam Harishon, okay, not like Adam general, but Adam Harishon, like proper noun. They were like Adam avru brit. They went against the covenant. Uktiv hatam et briti efer. When it talks about the mitzvah brit milah, it says, if you don't do this, you will basically go against my covenant. And that shows Brit Milah as the covenant, and he went against the Brit. Rav Nachman Omer Kofer B'ikaraya. Forget that. He was a real heretic. He went against like the basic principles of Judaism. Ktiv Hacha Avru Brit, Uktiv Hatam Va'amru Al Asher Azvu Et Brit Hashem Elohei Avotam. And that's the Brit, and the Brit there is Avodah Zarah. He worshipped idols. Tnanatam. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Hevei Shakud L'mod Torah B'da Ma Shetashiv La'apikoros. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer says you should be shakud. You should really learn Torah well. What's the reason? Well, you have to know how to answer these heretics. Okay, remember, in their time, these early Christian heretics were a big thing, right? And you have to know how to answer apikoros. Now, the root of the word apikoros, and I want to talk about it right now because it's very interesting in this context. The root of the word apikoros, I'm going to just read from the Koran because they're always good with the language. From the name of the Greek philosopher Epicurus, whose utilitarian behavioral system of philosophy and rejection of the belief in the existence of the soul became a symbol of heresy. Okay, and that's why it's called apikoros. But you're going to see in the Gemara that they're going to talk about the root of apikoros, and I don't know the answer to this, whether it's the rabbis are darshaning the root of epikoros differently, because they're going to talk about it from the language of hefker, right? Ownerless, of not disregard for everything. Or maybe the root of hefker comes from this apikoros. In other words, maybe it comes from the Greek, and from there, hefker came into the Hebrew language. So I don't know, but there's the rabbis are connecting it, even though the real source is really this Epicurus, but it could be that could be that the root of hefker comes from there even. Anyway, you see that from the sugya going forward. Let's read. So Rabbi Eliezer basically says you have to really learn Torah to know, because what were these early Christian heretics doing? They were using the psukim in the Torah to prove their beliefs against the Jews. And so you have to know, you have to understand the psukim well to be able to counter that. But Rabbi Yochanan comes and says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu ela apikoros goy, aval apikoros Yisrael koshkein de pakart fei. Says, don't try to answer those early Jewish, the early, like the Jews who became Christians, basically, because they know their stuff better and you're never going to win. And if you lose against them, it's really detrimental. So if you have an apikoros goy, no problem. But if you have one who was a Jew who now became a heretic, stay away from that. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. But then, even though he says that, he basically says, Kol makom shepakru minim shuvatam b'tzidan. Okay, pakru, they're using the language pakru as from the language of hefker. So anytime where pakru aminim, wherever they brought up this apikorsut, shuvatam b'tzidan, the answer is right there. So now we're going to go through all these verses, and we're going to go kind of quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on this. I want to get through the daf. But all is psukim without translating them all, but we're basically going to see one part of the pasuk, or one pasuk right near another. One says God in plural, and then there's a singular form. Okay? And then we're going to get to in the end, well, then why did they use plural form if there's only one God? Naseh Adam b'tzalmeinu, we already saw that one. So Naseh is plural. Vayivra Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo. But then it says, right, not we will, I created, right? One person created. And then it said b'tzalmo and not b'tzalmeinu. So again, the Rabbim turns to Yachid. Havan nirdav and avlasham sfatam. This is God saying, I'm going to mix up all the languages, but it says nirdav and avla. We are going to do this. Vayered Hashem lirota te'ir v'etamigdal. But then God himself goes down, singular. Kisham niglu elav Elohim. There God revealed himself, but again, niglu is plural. La'el ha'oneu ti biyom tzarati. Okay, this is with Yaakov. It's to the God who revealed himself to me on my day of trouble. Kimi goy gadol asher lo Elohim krovim elav. Okay, Elohim krovim. That's plural. The God is close to him. Kashem Elokeinu b'kol kareinu elav. But like God, who when we turn to Him, singular. Umicham Yisrael goyecha ba'aretz asher halchu Elohim. God walked, but halchu, plural. Lifdot lo la'am, but to redeem for Him, singular. Adi karsavan remiv, till the thrones were placed. V'atik yomi nativ, and the one of ancient will sit. So there's thrones, plural, and then one person will sit. Hanach lama. So now they say why they have all this. Why is it in plural if it's really only one? Kindu Rabbi Yochanan. Dam Rabbi Yochanan. He answered this question. Ena kadosh baruch hu said davar elen kenim lach bepamalia shalmala. Again, God is the ultimate ruler. Under him, he has people working for him, not people but angels. Right? He has the angels in heaven. Shneimar b'gzerat irin pitgamu b'mamar kadishin sha'ilta. Okay, this pasuk is this is saying 1 second. Big Zerat, Irin Pitga. Sorry, I don't remember the translation of this pasuk. Let me just find it. He does not act unless he, right. Okay. Big Zerat, Irin Pitgama, Ma'amar Kadisha, right. The Ma'amar Kadishin, he checks in with the people, the Kadoshim up there. He asks them before he does anything. So Hatinach Kulhi, okay, I get all the others, but Adi Karsavan Remiv Ma'ikal Memar. All the others we can explain. But thrones means there's multiple rulers. You only sit in the throne if you're the ruler. Echad lo v'echad David. One for God, one for David, King David. Detanya, as we see in the following braita, echad lo v'echad David, divrei Rabbi Akiva. However, in that same braita, Amar lo Rabbi Yossi, Akiva, how can you bring the Shechina down by saying there's going to be a throne for God and a throne for a person? That doesn't make any sense. You're totally wrong, Rabbi Akiva. It has to be one for din, one for tzedakah, which reminds us actually of earlier in the Masechah when we talked about din and we talked about pshara, and that there's two ways to go. Some people have it as there's din for other nations, there's tzedakah, mercy for the Jews, or there's all different ways to understand what this is. Anyway, kible minei or lo kible minei. So our first answer was echad lo echad David. Then Rabbi Yossi came and disagreed with that. So did Rabbi Akiva change his way and agree with Rabbi Yossi in the end? Tashma, let's see from here. Detanya, echad l'din, echad l'tzedakah, divrei Rabbi Akiva. So you see Rabbi Akiva changed his mind and was convinced. Amar lo Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. But in that same source, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah comes and says, Akiva, malachai etzel hagadah, kelech etzel negeim v'olod. It's a great line. What are you doing darshaning psukim and philosophy? You don't know anything about this. Go back to nigaim and ohalot and leprous marks and ohalot and tuma. That's where your expertise is. Don't waste it on this philosophy stuff. No, it's not one for din, one for tzedek. It's one for God to sit and one for his feet. Okay, a footrest. There were two thrones, all for God. Okay, and there you have three different interpretations. Interesting that both, Rabbi Akiva kind of took one after being reprimanded and then got reprimanded about that one as well. Amar Rav Nachman, we're back to how complicated it is to answer these heretics. He says, if you're like Rav Idit, then you can answer them back. If not, don't bother, because again, they were worried about the Jews losing these polemics. Amar hahu mina Rav Idit. So why was he so great? Well, let's see. So Amin said to Rav Idit, K'tiv ve'el Moshe Amar alei al Hashem. Now, it says, right, so Moshe was told, go up to God. But this is God speaking. So alei elai mi'ba'alei. God should have said, come up to me, not come up to God. Why would we be talking about himself in the third person? It must be someone else was speaking. So in the meaning, there were two gods. Amar le zeu matatron sheshmo kashem rabo dechtiv kishmi b'kurbo. If you remember, there's this angel that God says in Shmo Kaf Gimel, I'm going to send an angel to go before you. And it says there, Kishmi b'kurbo, my name will be in him. So basically, he was speaking in the name of God and then said, go up to God because it was someone else speaking. But it doesn't mean there was another ruler. Well, then we should pray to this person. If he's like God and Shmi b'kurbo, right? Why don't we pray to him and worship him? So they answer, K'tiv al tamirbo. So these are all psukim relating to that angel. Al tamirbo literally means don't rebel against him. But al timirenubo, we darshan it, don't switch him for me. Okay, God is saying, this is an angel, but he's not taking my place. And the continuation of the pasuk says, Lo yisala pishechen. he will not atone for your sins. So now they say, Im Kain, if he's not going to do any of this, then lo yisal pishachem lamali. Why do we need even for you to tell, for the pasuk to have told us that? Now, this is all, I wasn't so clear because I'm kind of rushing to get through the daf, but this is all a back and forth with this Min and this Rav Edid. So then what's the point of sending the angel, the Min says, if the angel can't atone for your sins? So Amarle, Hemanuta biyadan, afilu beparvanka nami lo kabline. So he says, what do you mean? We have a tradition that even as a messenger, Moshe wasn't willing to accept this angel. Dichtiv, you're right. He didn't have a purpose. They didn't want him to have a purpose. In other words, in the end, this angel doesn't go because Moshe says, if you're not going to come with us, I don't want this angel. Another issue with the mean. Again, same idea. It says me'et Hashem. Hashem himtir, it should have said me'ito, not from God again. Why in the third person? So Amar le'ahu koves, this launderer came and says shavke. Okay, leave. He says to Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, I got this mean. Okay, I'll answer. We're going to see this tomorrow also with the daughter of the Caesar. She says to Rabban Gamliel, I'll answer him back. Okay, so you see there's a bit of a pattern here that there were sometimes other people almost unexpected. Kovsim were usually the lowlifes, and the daughter of the Caesar, Bichlal, she wasn't even Jewish, but we can answer. Dichtiv vayomer melemech lenashav. Lemech says to his wives, Adav etzila, shmana koli neshe lemech. He says to them, listen to my voice, you wives of Lemech. Now he's Lemech. Right? Nishei mebaile should have said my wives. Sometimes people talk about themselves in third person. Okay, Amarle Menalehai. So the Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi goes to this kaves. Where'd you get this from? And with this, we're going to finish for today. Mi pirkei to Rabbi Meir Shmili. I happened to go to the Shiur of Rabbi Meir, and he taught it. To Am Rabbi Yochanan kevadarish Rabbi Meir b'pirkei, when he would teach, havadarish tilta shmata. Third was halacha. Tilta agadita. Third was drashot, and tilta. And the third was matli, mishalim, parables. He had 300 fox tails, okay, and we only have 3 of them. It sounds like Aesop's fables kind of thing, right? And he had all these parables he would use with foxes, and forget about it, he must have had even more about other things. But we only remember 3 of them, and we'll start with that tomorrow. Okay, so now we're gonna. Right, this is all, right, the parables are for explaining things. This is why, right, why a fox? We'll go read Aesop's fables, right? Most of them are with foxes. The foxes are the deceitful ones. They're always considered the ones who know how to trick everybody. Okay, what did we do? So let's try to do a very quick summary. We finished up with Chichonya because we got to that from Cain and Hevel, okay, just to kind of figure out all the associated connections. From there, we got off on the tangent of Rabbi Chia's sons because Rabbi Chia was the one who brought all those statements. And it had a little bit to do with the content. And then we finished up with Tzidkiyahu and how the Galut came a little earlier and what that saved us from. Why was that a good thing that God made it happen 2 years earlier? Then we got to this Adam Nivra Yechidi, and we talked all sorts of things about Adam Nivra Yechidi, why Adam is Nivra Yechidi, and what about, why people are different from each other, and why, when Adam Rishon was created, what happened on that day, all the things about the creation of man. Then we got to, and the greatness of man, and how man was then, kind of made much smaller. From there, we got to a bunch of other things like he spoke in Aramaic, and whether or not he was a heretic. And from there, we got up to all these heretical statements and how, possible answers to answer heretics, and sort of talking about, is it okay to answer heretics? Should we be doing it or should we not be doing it? And again, this all has to be understood in the historical context of the early Christian polemics. That we finish for today, and another whole day tomorrow of heretics and all sorts of questions. Have a great Shabbat. Wishing everyone Shabbat Shalom and B'sorot Tovot. May the hostages return soon and safely.